All right, everyone, welcome back to another episode of Project Boozbeam, the number one alien topic podcast in the universe according to our extraterrestrial sources. Have fun fact checking that one. Today, we have a new guest, an ET contactee. He has numerous contact experiences, physical and the astral, and he likes to teach his audience different topics around the fields about all different spiritual lessons topics. Here's Barry Littleton. Anything I forgot there?
No, not at all. Greetings. Thank you very much for having me. I really appreciate it. And I love the background.
No problem. I figured, this is one of the first video Project Booze Beams. Let's put myself on a spaceship, feel a little bit more at home, or, at least have it fit.
Right on.
Yeah, one thing I like about your content, Barry, is there's a lot of people out there who, given how touchy the subject is or how much of a red flag it is for a lot of people out there just seem to be following a pattern and telling stories over and over again, as if they only come from three different star systems, right? We've been seeing the same stories regurgitated over and over since the 60s, 70s, 80s. It just went from like hippie milfs to, people who want to fit in more. And there has to be some process of discernment. And given how crazy the topic is, there's not a whole lot of checking boxes there, but everyone else seems to have their own experiences. And with a topic like this, it's very easy for people to discredit themselves going into the alien realm. Researching history, and then a bunch of good information that can be proven, and then they talk about aliens. And then it's like, oh, great. There goes the person's credibility. But the reason I reached out to you is I've had a couple experiences, and, was it a dream? Was it not a dream? And then I'd watch an interview that you were in, and I'd be like, oh, shit. I'm not crazy.
I know what you mean. Yeah. Very cool. Very cool. Thank you for that. And that's the whole reason that I had kind of spoke out, is to just, if it resonates with anyone. And when I started having experiences really vividly when I was 7 years old, stuff that was changing my life, and as I got a little older, from transition from what I call childhood experiences to adult onset, I couldn't find any material that was resonating with what was happening to me. I could find out plenty of stuff about Betty and Barney Hill, plenty of stuff about grays and reptiles, but not the stuff that I was experiencing. You know what I mean? So that causes an amount of makes one disconcerted, especially when it came to the fact that I couldn't find outside of Barney Hill any other contactees that looked like myself. I couldn't find any representation of beings that look like me, or at least melanin dominant, So those are the things that cause stress for anybody who's going through things that are so far out of your normal realm of perception. It's disconcerting.
It's something that already so few people are involved in, and then you get outcasted in that as well.
Yeah.
That's what we needed, right?
But I think that I'm seeing it changing a little bit. Like even before this whole COVID era happened, I started seeing, like the last conferences I went to, a more integrated audience. So things are slowly starting to change. And I think that's what needs to happen for us to really become, quote unquote, a type 1 civilization, So
yeah. That's something you bring up in a few of your episodes, a few of your videos you put out there, the type 1 to type 5 or so civilization. Could you do a brief explanation of that?
Yeah. Well, currently where we're at is type 0 civilization, meaning that we're living on. Never would have guessed. It's a very hellish place down here. But at that point, we're still dealing with fossil fuels for our main power source. Once we advance to a type 1 civilization, we'll start using solar more. The sun becomes the primary power source. Then advancing to a type 3 civilization, they begin using space itself as a power source. Things like the Kashmir effect and certain free energies you can get from space. That's advancing that even more. Then you go to type 4 and type 5 civilizations. But it's my belief that here on Earth, we were once a type 1 civilization, and we still have relics that are functioning from then. Some things like maybe that is SETI Ranch that device in that mountain. I think there's one at Mount Shasta, one at Mount Caligash, I think it's called. Certain places on Earth, power spots that are still active that represent things that will keep our consciousness going that we can't explain now. That represents Type One civilization. That's
Back
my
when
belief. And
back
yeah,
when we had common sense.
yeah. When
Yeah.
right now, my friend, if even if you were let's just go sci-fi geek wise, even if
Let's
you
do
were
it.
just like a Jedi or something, and you cruise by this planet, you would be like, keep going, check please. You wouldn't want to stop here. I
Right.
mean, it's
Where's the fun
I
stuff?
mean, if you come and get out of your craft, there's a great chance you're going to be attacked. That's just what happens down here. So we can't expect. I hear so many the star beings, screw them because they're not helping us. They're not saving us. Well, they're supposed to save us from ourselves, from our own quote unquote free will. It's not their job. There is some type of a quote unquote prime directive. They can
Talk
only
about
do so
projecting.
much. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. You've gone too far when you're projecting on something you can't even see.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And concerning what we're just talking about type one civilization, the only thing that would really sustain record keeping for thousands of years would be cave paintings and relics of that nature. So I think that needs to be taken much more serious than what it is. I just about to put out a video over giants and how that connects to things like Lovelock Cave and places like that, and just how much of that has been just erased off the history books. And you go
Yeah.
look up, if you Google giant skeletons, and the one I was doing over the mound builders, so Native American, Indian giant skeletons, you'll get like dozens and dozens of articles will come up from late, things that were leaked. Not all those can be absolutely fake. What happened to those skeletons? Where'd they go? Is it true what they're saying about the Smithsonian? These are things that just are important for us to go forward without all these lies. I mean, so much concocted information we have here that it's really just it's troubling to say the least.
It's like they say, history's written by the winners, or in this case, the rulers. And
Yeah.
there's so many documents of experiences or cataclysms or historical events that maybe they were having some kind of intuition or vision, like a lot of people on the planet are now. One story that I remember you told is, and maybe a lot of people going to these conferences are realizing, okay, there's a series of things that didn't add up, but now they're adding up now that I'm able to see it from a higher plane. And there was a situation involving fog or rain or acid. Could you help us out with that? What was that story?
I had when I was a kid, I was having these experiences. I'd wake up like not at home in the school, like I call it a school, but really was a room, like where there was a table and you had to do things on this table, like make the water move with your mind, move a feather with your mind, levitate these balls. But in another experience, and I call this the acid rain experience because this is when they were physical experiences. So they're very real for me, especially when you're tired the next day because it seems like you've been up all night in this room doing these activities. But the acid rain experience actually crossed it from my kind of nightlife to my daily life. And there's no doubt what was happening to me physically was real. What this was I was in the sixth grade and I had woke up one night and I'm on board this craft. I'd fall asleep for a little bit. I wake up on this craft. And this craft was more metal than the other ones I've been on board. It's like the plates were metal to the point with the lights on them, but there's a screen, a big screen here, okay? And over the screen, it looks like to me what's like some type of a mountain pass, like maybe the Andes, I don't know, but it's snow topped. And I can see two UFOs out here. And one of them looks like, and it's heavy mist and fog out there like clouds, but it looks like two of them they're sucking stuff up underneath of them. I can see it. And they're emitting a light after that. Now, on this, next to this screen is a being levitating about 2 feet off the deck plates. And what's odd is this individual is someone I recognized in terms of energetically. This was someone that came and played with me when I was a kid, like doing little things that kids do, like making dirt dams to stop the water and stuff like that. He just showed up a few times and then would take off. And he appeared to me what looked like kind of more of a Caucasian man, a kid, with a bill on and these kitty cat glasses. Okay, but he was telepathic, as was I, as are many of your audience, I'm sure. But you know, the thing about telepathy with people is that we just pick stuff up, telepictures, maybe a little emotion. He was much stronger than that and
Mhm.
telepathically, but I thought that he was just somebody that could do it like me. Anyway, so fast forward a couple of years, I see him on board this craft, floating on board the deck plates, and he's communicating with me tons of information. And I recognize him in terms of he doesn't look like a kid anymore. He's got on a uniform. And he was what we would call an insectoid. But I want to be very clear that he did not look like a mantis or an ant person. You know, he didn't have the like that. He was his configuration was similar to mine at the age I was. He wasn't much bigger than me, so I always thought he was a kid too. He was playing with me, so I thought. But anyway, here at this uniform, I recognize this is a very ancient being, scientific. And I've got sorry when you're in the presence of a non-human physically. You could be in danger. I ask questions. Oh, I'm feeling love, energy coming off him in the environment. I ask, who are you? What do you want? Where are you from? These are questions, and some of these he would start answering telepathically in my mind before I could formulate them. So
Mhm.
that was disconcerting, but you just accept it and go with it. But it takes time to kind of catch up to reprocess all the information that's relayed. Anyway, sorry. He had started saying that he started talking about when I asked where he's from. He's saying me to go. No, he said I won't understand, but I was like, try me. I was watching Doctor Who, so I thought I was heavy. Anyway, he says go 900 million light years out and go outside of the space time continuum. What I didn't know what that meant.
Easier
You
said
know,
than done.
yeah, yeah. Then
Yeah.
he says, since you don't know what that means, this will be easier when you catch up. Try the third and fourth planets outside of Pluto. There are bases there that we use as jump off points into your solar system because we have problems with the density. So, and he says, especially in the atmosphere of Earth, due to what I've termed the M&M effect. He
Hmm.
was saying microwaves and metals were very dangerous for them in our atmosphere if they were like to come out of their craft and things like that. So that, and to the point where I think they could maybe even get trapped here in our atmosphere or something like that. So this is what, so he's saying that the ships are actually trying to counteract the acid rain and the effects of acid rain. And at this time, my friend, I never heard of that. Okay, so I spent a little bit of time trying to ask back, what's that? There's no such thing, And he's telling me that we're having problems with that too, and the M&M effect is part of that as well. So fast forward about maybe a week, I'm in the sixth grade, and my teacher used to make us read every Friday what was called at the time the Scholastic News, really good on current events. And she would always torture some child by having them come up there and read it in front of the main article in front of the class. And I got selected this time. And I'll never forget this because the picture on the front was the Statue of Liberty.
Hmm.
And the Statue of Liberty was being it was under reconstruction, and parts of it weren't open for touring due to it being repainted and reconstructed due to the damage of acid rain. And when I was reading that and I came across that acid rain, I yelled it out and everybody started laughing. I got in trouble like I was joking, but it blew me away because here was these words that this individual had put in my mind right there and it having an effect on our environment. That's when I knew. I said, okay, this is definitely real. I knew it was anyway, but it was provable then. So my next goal was let something else happen. I'm gonna try to grab some technology. I'm gonna try to grab something so I can prove, something's happening to me. It didn't go down like that, but that was so. That's what
You
I
you
call the
weren't
acid rain experience.
you weren't the
Yeah,
first that
sorry.
tried.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, there's something there on board. At least the crafts I've been on board that they call temporal aphasia,
Hmm.
which is a type of a sickness because technically the outside and inside of the craft are not in the same dimension. So what we're seeing here in the sky is third dimensional, but we're on board. It's a different environment that is half theirs, half ours, where I could exist there. I don't think for super long time, but they can also exist there too. But for me, it caused a type of temporal aphasia sickness, like you're being pulled down. And I didn't know as a kid why I was hated merry-go-round so much. That type of a feeling when you get off one of those, man, it's yeah. So
That
and then
makes
with a little bit
sense.
hard to breathe too. Like where you're at now, if you kind of put a thin mist around the decks down to the plates, and it's a thin mist that you breathe, it smells like a type of, I don't know. It's like to me, it smells like Windex, some type of ammonia. All right, and that makes it hard to breathe. You feel like you're being pulled down. There's temporal aphasia. You've got these beings that are bombarding you telepathically.
Mm-hmm.
So it's you know, if you're a kid like me, I was a kid walking around on a field trip. Yo, what's that? What's that? You know, I was that type of a kid. So
Now, that makes sense because I hated roller coasters growing up. I never, even before being on a roller coaster, I hated roller coasters.
yeah,
It makes
yeah,
a lot of sense, and it feels like exactly. It's like there's something there that is the purpose is so both of us can have a symbiotic form of communication. Otherwise, it's not going to take place. I'm going to be sick. They're going to be sick. Everyone's unhappy.
Definitely, yeah. It's you know, there's a symbiotic. It's one thing I really want to emphasize is that the craft I've been on, especially the one that I had on my first adult set onset experience. This was I lost 4 hours with this, and I was with somebody else. So, but you know, this craft was definitely organic and definitely alive. When I touched the inside of it, it was similar to like I want to call it what we call toadstools, mushrooms. Like how you touch one in the yard, you touch it similar to that, but much more harder consistency. You know, so I knew it was organic, and I began asking questions for some of the tours that just they're in my mind. Some of them I can see, some of them I can't.
So that's where I want to cut you out because I've had a very similar experience. But before we get to that fun part, I'm interested in the form of communication because there's been a time where I would be in a deep meditative state to the point where I would go to sleep, and I would set my alarm for whatever time I set it for, like 8 or 7:38. And I would be in and out. I'll be like, okay, I'm probably 15, 20 minutes away from waking up. I'm remembering my dreams. And then just through, right before that, my eyes are still closed. My mind is still blank. I hear audibly, not my voice. The voice said, time is just a measurement. And my alarm went off at that very same moment. I'm like, okay, what the heck was that? I'm like, okay, that's very weird. I maybe have like a higher self girlfriend out there and they're explaining everything to me. But there's definitely something that's beyond time that's trying to help me understand what's going on. And then almost a year later, there's an experience I had where this time it was all vision, but I was able to feel the energy in the body that I was having there, and by proxy when I woke up, the body here. And I would see helicopters falling and military people of different branches, and I could see. I was wondering, like, okay, is this a vision that's coming forth that's trying to be projected to me? But everything that happened there were helicopters falling here at bases, like within the next couple months after. And then at the very end of the dream was something very odd that I'm like, okay, I have a geopolitical podcast. I try to figure out what's going on. What do I believe will happen? What will not? Is there misinformation being fed to me through the ethers? There was Trump, but he was in the outfit that everyone sees General Patton in, like the hard helmet, but it was his face. It was Patton's face, then turned into Trump's face. And he was around a bunch of military people, and there was like a button or a level, and he said, I'm going to bomb Iran. And in my head, I'm like, that's something that he wouldn't do. You know, I mean, of course, there's the Kushner connection and everything, but I don't think we're going to go that far. Then a missile comes up, and then the next thing I know, I'm being thrown back, like out of the picture, and I wake up, and I'm like, okay, that's weird. Maybe some things are going to happen, but definitely, like, that one is too far. We're not going to do a thing that's going to push us towards World War III. And it just goes to show me after the fact, when that actually happened, and he blew up the guy. Like, well, it doesn't really matter if I believe it or not, because it's coming true.
Yeah, the kind of ESP like that to a degree, and the connection like that. Yeah, it's very interesting, you know.
Through these
definitely.
experiences, how are you able to tell what is physical and what is etheric and astral?
Well, for me, I don't really talk about my astral experiences much because for me they're just not as tangible. For me, one, the physical experiences, the aphasia, the sickness is unmistakable. That is a
Mhm.
physical symptom. Another thing would be the fact I can actually touch things and get a sensitive or sense from touching things. And, it's kind of like the same as if you suddenly wake up somewhere else. Now you get transported. If you got, what is they used to do in the movies always?
Teleport?
Chloroform people. Yeah, chloroform.
Ah.
They chloroform people and they suddenly wake up somewhere else. But something like that happens, when you're having a physical experience. Another thing I'll throw in is that after the experience itself, although there'll be missing time and fragmented memories that start kind of dissipating the further you get from the event horizon itself. That's one problem. But afterwards, like this, I'd say the first day after the encounter, a physical one, I would be really hyped and have a lot of energy. But then after that, for about 3 days, I'd be just wiped out. You know what I
Mm.
mean? Sleeping a lot. So that was another thing that was definitely a product of the physical contact itself. And I think a lot of that is being, like I said, a temporal aphasia, but being on a craft that is a different vibration than us, faster. I think it takes a lot of our perception to keep it up, and it's just hard on the body. Maybe one reason that my physical experiences seem to kind of stop around the age 28. They weren't like they were. Information started coming, just flowing in more, but not as much the physical thing that was just stopping my world. That's why I don't have a lot of interest in. No, all respect to those that do CE5 and all that. But for me, calling in craft is not really my thing because once they get too close, real ones, you start losing time, and man, it
Hmm.
messes with your life. It'll mess with your daily life, even if it's a positive contact. Try and just go ahead and make your paychecks or go to school, whatever you're doing. Your mind's going all sorts of ways, going on higher levels. So it
So it's
just makes it difficult. Yeah.
so it's important to note that even though you might get the physical sensations or the sickness, it might still be positive or quote unquote positive beings doing it.
Yeah, yeah. I
Okay.
I've never had negative encounters of any type, but nonetheless, but the environment is still hard to a degree, and that part is just hard to deal with physically, I think. And another thing, when you start seeing things, especially technology that you don't have a frame of reference for,
Hmm.
it blows you away, and even that can make the recalling some things difficult. You know
You
what I
have
mean? It's
you have
very,
no
very interesting.
foundation to grasp it in.
Yeah, and something you may have experienced in your encounters is that sometimes on board these craft, the rooms tend to move around you,
Hmm.
or to a point of I don't know what that says about interspatial geometry, but it's something different, I swear. And to a point where like there was like some of these on one of these craft, it looked like almost these little garage windows on the walls or in the middle column of this. And I'm curious. So when I get done about ready to puke from temporal aphasia, I just kind of looking, just want to see in there, like what's in there, like you look in the window for a garage. Then all of a sudden, zoom, and you're
Yep.
in that room. And then, oh, the aphasia gets even worse. You're almost barreling over. So there's something to say about how these craft are organic and how they move interspatial wise. I mean, to the point, I would almost venture to say, is it like being digested to a certain degree? Especially when you go to the lower bowels of the craft, it's like being sucked down there, like almost
Yeah.
going through a birth canal or something. You
Here
know what I
comes
mean?
this is the fun part. All right.
All
So,
right.
so, all right. So, I mean, there was one time in my experience in the craft that looked similar like this. I didn't really get the temporal aphasia part, and I wonder if it's because of one of my earlier experiences. And the reason I bring up that, oh, if you have that, it might not be good or bad beings. I've seen beings that are undoubtedly good. It's just beautiful cosmic engulfing energy, just love and light everywhere. I've
Mhm.
seen bad ones that have bad intention, and in a way, I feel like I almost favor experiences, and I'm not putting it out there that I want to have more. Disclaimer. With the bad ones than the immoral ones, because at least the bad ones, you know what's up. The immoral ones, just, just they're connected to everything because that's how that dimension works. But they've lost the code that is needed to discern. And that experience I had was the most bizarre on the basis that I I'm normally able to have, well, I always have a control to what degree I want to have, what part of my body, my ether, my astral, whatever, under my control. And then if I'm going somewhere, there's some agreement there. But there was one night I went to bed somewhat early, like 9:30ish, and for 3 hours, I remember I was waking up briefly in between, just sweating my heart out, and it was probably about 12:30 the last time where I just felt like there were beings around me. And I'm like, nope, I'm going to stay in bed. I'm going to sleep through it. I'm not going. I'm not going. And then, uh, closer to 3 o'clock, I'm having this experience where it's like, okay, it doesn't matter what I want. All of a sudden, I'm up somewhere. I see the giant, ones. I won't describe them for my own safety. Anytime I tell this story before maybe a year ago, I'd instantly be getting sick, or at least be
Oh,
coughing and
wow.
sneezing. Yeah, I mean
You
that
said
could
giants, right? Oh, interesting.
well, giants definitely not looking like us to say the least. And I was out of my body, and I was observing my body, and
Yeah.
I knew a trick that could get me safe, and that is something that they could do. And I know you'll be able to figure this out. Something that they can do, but because of their code, they wouldn't notice. So I, I woke up. I'm like, okay, I figured it out. Flew back into my body that was there. And then immediately I'm like, okay, I am in this trance. I am cold. I'm becoming hypothermic. Like I am sweating. I have to go to the hospital. Like this is weird. Like this might be it. I'm blacking out. I black out in the ambulance, and I'm like, okay,
Mm.
how long was I out? Just said you weren't out for that long. It's late at night, so there's constant shift changes at the hospital. They do my blood work and everything. The first doctor's like, okay, you're gonna have to tell your story to the other doctors. I'm about to leave. Hope everything's okay. And I was having heart palpitations as if something wanted to enter me or something like that. So
Oh,
I
wow.
so through that experience, the first doctor comes, the second doctor comes. I tell the experience, or not the experience, but I give the symptoms because I'm not going to tell them what I saw. But then the third doctor comes and instantly, like very spiritually attuned, very has knowledge of the occult and energies like that. And she's like, ah. And we just have this instant connection. I look at her and she looks at me and I'm like, well, what do you think was going on? And I'm like, something else. And she's like, something else. And I'm like, oh shit. But after that, that was the only experience I had where it's like, this group does not, they have their own code or lack of code, and through that energy mix, it's like, I prayed and I prayed and I prayed. It's like, I do not want to live like this. And through some experience, I woke up one night, there was a light being, and it's like, I do not want to not do what I'm here on this planet to do. To the point that it's like, whatever I have to do to get back to who I have to be, I'll be. And I'm not going to take my own life. I'm just putting that message out there, and luckily enough I was able to bounce back through some way, shape, or form. But on a positive note, when I was on the ship that looks like this, there was no problem getting on the ship, luckily. And there was a being that he wasn't wearing cat eyes. He looked like a human being but was taller. Short hair, just a tall white guy. And I would be on the ship, and it was very clear that I had to go meet someone. Like we were on a mission, or they were on a mission, and I was on a part of the mission in agreement with that. So we get into this room that isn't either of these, but it's a room like you describe. It's a long room. There's not a whole lot in it. A lot of gray walls, but there were a lot of plants. And this guy has a plan. Like we have something to do, but I'm like, there's all these roots and all these plants. Like I go exploring, which wasn't his plan, but my soul is all excited. Like I have to learn. These plants are coming up, and I hear like, okay, that one's poisonous, therefore I jump over it. And then I turn around, and the guy is by a door that would be like maybe behind me. And he's like come on, we have to go. I'm like, "Oh, but I want to learn about all these plants." And then we go down a hallway that looked like this hallway. I don't know if my hand's disappearing, but this hallway. And there was one room that looked like a bathroom, and then there was another room that looked like a wash, like a just a like a mud room. And we went into that room, and it's exactly like you said. Something opened up, and I went down, and it was either before or after I was getting visions of people that I was about to meet, and I needed to let them know that things were going to be okay, or they have the option to change their mind or their life path. But I woke up going through this, what I assume is a wormhole, in what seemed to be like a flotation tank. It wasn't a coffin or anything, but there was some technology to it, and I woke up, or I don't know if I woke up, but I entered through there and I opened it, and there was a bunch of other people there, and then I went on to be like, okay, things are going to be okay, and preach what I had to be there to preach. So when I saw that interview of yours, we were like, yeah, I was on a plane, or I was on a UFO, and or a ship, and there were plants there. And I remember you said something about like a hyperbolic chamber. I'm like, maybe that's what I was on. I definitely want to learn more about that though.
Oh, hyperbaric chamber. Yeah,
Maybe.
that's the craft I was actually talking about. And it's that's the room that they put me in at the very end, because I know now, it's like this backpack thing I had on, and the room itself was very small. Once again, organic walls, but very small, and there's like a window in there, a circular window that I can see several of these beings looking at me. And I'm asking, why am I in here? I'm too little to even be in here. But this backpack, I look back and see something kind of coming down. It's like a tube leaning out of it,
Hmm.
and it's moving. It looks like, but it's not hurting whatever it's doing. But I realize now that was some type of oxygen they were giving me before they
Mm.
actually sent me back for the descent back to my car. I think to kind of maybe there'd be even worse side effects if they hadn't done that before they sent me back. Um, yeah, that's a very interesting experience. Something about the technology that they're using is that they can bilocate us.
Hmm.
And I've been on board a craft like just before my what I call the first onset experiences. I was about 17. I wake up and I'm on board this craft, and it had a different engine configuration that I call the gyrospherical engine. But actually, it looks like what they call a buckyball now, C60, which is almost looks like a hexagon, a ball, and then around that, but it's glowing with what they call AGLE, light, angelic golden liquid energy. That's what they called it. Okay, and it's this type of a living light, as they also call it, that projects out of this ball up this whole column. Like this thing looks like a huge building, like a skyscraper going up. But there are people I can see on the first deck, and I've got on my YouTube channel actually called that gyrospherical engine, and I show that this illustration done for Kasara that shows this craft. Um, Something about it though, when I get up to this other level, there's a group of people, but they're kind of transparent. And you
Hmm.
know what? They're not barreling over, holding their stomach like I am. So I think that says a lot that not just can they use the technology, but there's something about that technology when they bilocate you. There's a swirling feeling, like you mentioned, and also it makes you tired afterwards. You get really wiped out.
Hmm.
But I see now why they were having so many people in Astral, because there were people going over and touching the light one at a time, touching the light off the garden rail, off the guardrails. It's this living light, and so I know that now why when someone say that when they touch that light, it turns into a wormhole, and they start
Mm.
having access to the Akashic records. That's because the ship itself is grown over a singularity, the engine itself. So the engine itself is temporally displaced even more than the rest of the craft.
So
So
it
for
is.
me,
So it's like the singularity, but there is a blueprint or it's like a subsection of the singularity expressing itself to the person.
yeah, well, I would say no. I say more. It's just in function itself. But
Okay.
I think that when they're in dream body, which is based of light configuration also, and they touch that living light, it gives them access to that wormhole itself, to the that singularity that the ship itself is grown around. I think
Hmm.
that's why it turns into that and gives them access. Ultimately, that would be the Akashic Records too, that wormhole too, I believe. So,
So the light
but
was
like I
there
said,
as like a pillar, as a form of like a reaching out of communication.
yeah, yeah. And this when this goes up, it goes to the top part of this craft. It's got a huge. I've seen other black boxes on other craft, but this one was a huge black cube, black box at the top of this thing. And what I believe it contained was negative mass, is what they're
Mm.
using it because they're saying something about that they're using that and they're channeling the anti gravity field around the skin of the ship itself. So I think
Okay.
it's got something to do with the life energy itself and how they're using that for not just energy but conversion to anti gravity, what we call it, or at least gravity modification of some type. So it's an interesting deal, but I know why now. They have people like you would have that astrally. You won't be there getting sick like I was. It won't be interfering with information being relayed. That
But
was a major problem for me,
but
and I
I've
was
noticed with, I haven't seen a pillar of it, but I saw almost like a fountain with two ends, like it was a like a very large, like maybe 12 to 15-foot tube of like golden orange light, and
mm,
beings were, what was in plural, but it seemed like it could have been numerous beings could have used it, but one was communicating through that field that was being held there. And I feel like if we had the technology, which we probably do somewhere, if we're able to hold that in an environment, that's another way that people could just have communication like a telephone line. And it was delivering me message, and I would see the a figure of someone uh, who lived somewhat kind of around me, who I haven't had many conversations with, walk past walk past my dream, really, like within the dream. Um, didn't really go through it or not. And then the next day, I would step out of my apartment, and the dude's just right there looking at me, like kind of nodding. And I'm like, the heck is going on here? Which I kind of
mm,
had an idea, but I don't want him to know that, just in case.
mm.
But were any
You
of
know,
these? Yeah, go ahead.
yes, you described. Are you familiar with what's called the resurrection technology? There's,
Technology. Well, I think that's what my ambulance experience was.
really,
Yeah.
there's a place where they call other contactees call it the place of translation,
Hmm.
where you have a number of tubes similar to what you described. And sometimes it's also described as having actually entities inside of the light or inside of the tubes themselves. And that takes us into the realm of the fact that, like,
It was like a
for
soul
example,
lint roller.
yeah, for example, like this craft I've already described, we've talked about it a few times now. Another adeniment of it, a component of it was these eggs. They look like eggs, like glass on the front part, but then on the back there's like metal, and there's metal going in, like these tubes going into the organic wall. And there are tubes and there are these eggs on every craft I was on. Some two in some rooms, just one, some big, some little, and there were always these different lights floating around in there. One, the mist was even thicker in there. When you look in there, you could see it, but you see these different lights floating around in there. Some look like configurations of plasma, some different condensed light, and things like that floating around in there. At first, I thought these were power sources. But then when I started paying more attention to how a lot of these beings were also observing the eggs, like I kept looking at them, and then I get so sick in what I call this maturation room. And by the way, the being in that room that I just call the mother of the hybrids, although I didn't see any hybrids, but the technology in that room was this. It almost looked like a table, like a type of slab table. Like if I would have hit the top of it, it would have popped up with metal on the top of it. And there's water I can see actually going out of tubes into the wall. And this being is nursing this thing and telling me telepathically that I have to help. I have to fix this machine. It could hurt someone, and I'm not understanding. Fix it. I've never
Right.
seen anything like this. And she's telling me telepathically, no, this is ancient, and you help make it. You have to help fix it. And I can't remember this, but
I did.
during this time, she starts communicating this telethought, and it becomes so strong that suddenly it felt like I was floating across the room and I was smashing against my nose against this melanin dominant eye. And I know what this being did was through the optical nerves, bilocated me right there on the spot, lifted my light body, my dream body, and
Hmm.
brought it towards it. Now, I'm going to tell you, my friend, I don't know any humans that can do that. I don't know
Right.
any humans that are on the verge of about to do that. You know what I mean? So that says a lot about where these beings, at least the one I've dealt with, are consciously and vibrationally to do something like that. You know what I mean? But anyways, that's one time I had seen that type of. Sorry, I got a little carried away there, but
No
that's one
worries.
time I had seen some type of a water component to some type of a unit. But when dealing with this resurrection technology, um, we got to remember that when I realized that I was getting sick, like this in that room with this being, and the egg in that room, a couple of the lights came out
Hmm.
and attached, one attached here, and it looked like Saturn. It was yellow, but it had a ring around it. It attaches here, another blue one attaches here, and I could tell they're doing something to my aura, my biofield, my time field. They're doing something to ease the sickness. Then I went to the hyperbaric chamber after that. So that's when I realized these weren't power sources. These were crew members. With the way the other beings are looking at them, at the eggs, they might be command officers. So what I just described is something that's really like to be on a multi-dimensional ship. It ain't just Kirk over there and Spock over there and
Right.
Sulu. It's a totally different gig, man. You know.
All other
But
forms of
yeah,
consciousness.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So we start dealing with beings that don't have bodies and start coming in this solar system, our atmosphere. You start getting some that use these technologies to assume bodies, to gather enough gravitons or however they're doing it to actually have a physical appearance. Along with these are some of these. When you come from that far, sometimes you might just be thought forms, and
Hmm.
there are all sorts of different containers for consciousness: plasma, high energy, condensed light. Just food for thought, if nothing else.
If,
But
if
for
the
me, it
code
was somewhat
fits,
a
it'll
trip out
slide
to
in.
see it. Yeah. What's that?
If the code fits,
What's
it'll slide in.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
First, I said sliders. I thought you were talking about the TV show. I used to like
Oh
that.
no. Did any of these contact experiences ever get scary for you?
For me, just not knowing exactly where I was at and being in the presence of non-human, for me, self-preservation kicks in first.
Yeah.
But a lot of these beings and the environment itself seem to, so much love is being generated from it that it nullifies my fear to a certain extent. But for me, it's always still there. Someone criticized me because when the contact first happens, I spend the first time interrogating whoever this entity was. A non human in my field of awareness? Are you kidding me? I want to know what they want. Who are they? They could be tricksters. You don't know. So I spend a lot of times really interrogating them. But they answer so quick, with everything. But to me, it's necessary just in terms of self preservation.
Hey, they always say that, oh, the aliens feel like they can't trust us humans. Well, of course we're going to feel the same way towards them. There's a reason why we're how we are.
Yeah, yeah, but it comes to also, I think that, at least I can only speak for myself, but for me, I think a lot of it is them wanting to make sure I don't stay asleep or go back asleep, and also helping us to remember our soul life memories.
Hmm.
We're immortal souls to a degree, and we incarnate here mostly devoid of past life memories and soul life memories. A major issue with this place.
Yeah.
Major issue.
That's why
But
I'm
anyway.
that's why I'm always grateful for the experiences that I have, because even though I might not, I mean, this is not something that I've ever told my friends or anything like that. It's usually I have the experience, I go on with my life, because as far as I'm concerned, if it's that weird and society is the way it is, that experience was for me. Regardless if anything else happens, maybe I could spread the message in a different way. But
Mhm,
as far as I'm concerned, that's for me. And as far as I'm concerned, given the technology they have and whatever they may know about us or the energy around us,
mhm,
people always go out there and like, oh, let's go look for UFOs or let's look for beings.
mhm.
I'm like, dude, if they want you to see them, you're going to see them. If they don't want you to see them, you're not going to see them. And you might be next to someone who's currently seeing one and you're not seeing one.
Yes,
So one
yes,
question I
yes.
got for you is: have there ever been a time where others have been around you and either started seeing them or were not seeing what you were seeing?
A lot of times for me, it started happening that people would say after they interacted with me, they start seeing UFOs. And that was never my interest. Even at the SETI Ranch, I started having that happen. Or when I started doing these interviews and stuff, people start telling me afterwards. A couple of interviewers tell me that after we got done that night, I had an experience and things like that. So I think that's a part of it. I myself have just never been that interested in trying to call them in. You know what I mean? But I've been around somebody before, some people where like three of us could see it and like two people couldn't out of five people. The other people are going, it's right there, it's right there, it's right there. Everybody's going, I don't see anything, but it's there and it's moving. So I think it does have a lot to do with the vibration you're on, that soul connection, and if they want you to see them, you'll see them. Because I had tried to, when I tried to actually make experiences happen, so I had my great plan that I'm going to grab some technology and I'll be able to prove to the world, but it didn't work that way at all. And when I tried to initiate the contact, it wouldn't happen. They do it when they want it to happen. Mm-hmm. And I'll tell you, it is irritating because when I was in the sixth grade, just year before that, ET had just come out. So he was making shortwave radios and he was doing all sorts of stuff, and none of that worked for me. So that was, somewhat disconcerting.
I noticed whenever I would take the one click in the direction of let's see what I can do, all of a sudden it's a wishful thinking energy I'm putting out, which by nature is a little bit selfish. But when I ease in and have a little bit of more faith that okay, more things will come or whatever, I can still hold the logic to that. But if I open myself up to that, then all of a sudden things start to flow more, and it seems to be a little bit more welcoming. And pity those who pity. But a reason I asked that question is, there's not a lot of normalization of the topic. And, when I have my experiences and I see someone else who's saying something that validates what I've had, and we might be able to figure out something else that, one of us forgot during an experience. Obviously, we don't have to reach out to each other, but at least there is some proof to us beyond what we can even, I can't explain a handful of the situations. Mm-hmm. And by proxy, to me, that validates your story. And there's a lot of people who are regurgitating the same stories over and over, the same talking points, these are the 3 or 4 or 5 places that all the beings come from, and they all act like this. Like, no, they have free will too. And it turns into following the code for the sake of entertainment. And quite frankly, I think the people deserve better than a circle jerk of the same information of the same people.
Agreed. To a point to where I got around some of these people that are in the media, and they claim to be these psychics. They claim to be mediums, and some of us are and don't say anything, but when it comes, they're doing all these little gimmicks, and they start trying to read me. Oh, you're from somewhere way out there. We can't see where it is. No, you can't, because you're using this.
Are you trying to say I look funny or something?
Stuff, and they're never talking about extragalactic contact. Mm-hmm. Almost all my experiences were extra. When these guys finally gave me a name, how long I tried to bug all these beings for a name, and I got nothing. I'm 36 years old. I'm doing this because I survived all these brain injuries, this car accident. I survived my morning walk, and suddenly start hitting me with a name. After all those years, and the name they gave me was so far out, I said, you got to be kidding me. I was supposed to tell people that name? It's worse than the Galactic Federation. It's worse than the Ashtar Command.
All their names are so corny.
Yeah, and the name they gave me was Extragalactic Interdimensional Cooperative Alliance. And I'm taken back, like this, I'm telepathically saying this is a joke, right? And they're telling me I'm getting decisive vibration. It's not a joke. Mm-hmm. And they're also communicating, pay close attention to the cooperative, because we go from the micro to the macro interdimensionally as well. So that kind of started making me think differently. Okay, it's not a joke. They're meaning this for a reason. It may not be the great cool name people want, but that's the only one I know. And I know that some of these beings are working on the timelines also, and working. I think that's the real war going on right now, is on timelines. Yeah. And I think what we're seeing in our society right now was purposely done by some type of a time jump that creates some type of a lab accident or something, or some crook in there letting this stuff out that completely ruined our lives and our whole society.
I've
You know
said
what I mean?
I think that's what religion is. Someone went back in time and threw a book on the ground. Yeah.
You know, and not to mention, scientifically speaking,
Hmm.
we have things like Project Stardust and detonating hydrogen bombs in space, ripping through dimensions. You know, you have uh, microorganisms from space that possibly declared war on humanity on this planet. And they
Hmm.
start coming in on meteorites, invading. We start having odd things like prion diseases, mad cow disease, mad deer disease. These things just come out and seem to just kind of go away that are prion based diseases. Very odd here. So, I mean, technically, if you have a war, you destroy thousands of microorganisms that are unconscious on the cellular level, and they might actually be from a type 2, 3 civilization that's gone into the micro, into the pico. It could be a real problem here. Real problem. And what I'm seeing, it wouldn't take much for dark forces to back engineer these space microbes.
Most people
Food
wouldn't
for
even
thought.
know.
Food
I
for thought
like.
only. And in my opinion, they've been trying to do this for a long time, going all the way back to a book I read back in the late 90s called The Hot Zone. And they were talking about the different types of Ebola. Then a few years after that, a movie based off that book with Dustin Hoffman, Outbreak.
Hmm.
Anyway, so I don't want to go too far on that, but that's not what we're talking about. But it's a bad time, and I wish everybody good health. And it's
No
just a
worries.
trip.
You brought up the car crashes. There were two times. One car crash that I wouldn't have passed away in, but it definitely was intense, and one that happened when I was a teenager. And if you looked at the car, you would see you would be like, okay, everyone in there definitely died. But it was also the first time in my life that I ever wore a cross. I wore a cross because apparently I go from being a 7 to an 8, or however attractive I was back then. But I always said that growing up, my life in ten words would be I was born an atheist and then things got weird. And after that, it's like, okay, there's some conscious energy that happens when I pray, because I'd be like, oh, I'd tell the story, oh, what happened in the car crash? Oh yeah, and I was wearing the cross, and yeah. And then everyone's like, he saved you, and I'm like, yeah, sure, fucking idiot. But then then I'd have my own experiences and be like, okay, there's some cosmic energy that is some etheric energy that's dropping down, and I'm realizing what I actually like and what I don't like and who I really am. And then a few weeks before a birthday of mine, um, I wanted to develop my medium skills, because I would have psychic experiences and I'd be intuitive, but I wanted to develop that specifically. For whatever reason, I felt like it's time. And in ancient Egypt, they would hit you in the head with a nail or something like that, and all of a sudden, congratulations, you can talk to the other realms. And there was one time where a friend was parking a car, and they were gonna go park somewhere, and I said, "No, don't park here. Let's park a bit closer." And then they said, "Okay." They were kind of in a trance, but we moved forward to the next spot, and there was some deja vu energy field that happened, and I felt present in the entire moment, but I felt like something shifted. And in that moment, their legs slipped, slammed on the gas, went flying into what was conveniently, and if we didn't move, we'd be in front of a storefront, into a cement planter that was a couple feet away, and then zoomed at full speed into a couple other cars and stopped. After that, the window was open, that veil was lifted, and I was able to have more medium like experiences. And on Spiritual Superclass and through our Patreon, we have a tier where we did some channeling of celebrities. I had a friend who was a world famous psychic, to the point that it's like you show up instantly legit, starts telling you about things you wish you didn't even know, able to tell you stories about your ancestors, like on the dot. In her case, obviously for a price. And she explained it to me like, yeah, that kind of had to happen. It was time, and if I'm holding out and I didn't want that to happen, I guess the fourth decided it's time for me to be a medium.
You know, I I had my accident. I I went through but three windows, including the T tops. So I took four catastrophic traumatic brain injuries. I died twice on the way to the hospital.
Wow.
And it brought me back, and it took about a month to remember who I was before I had what TBI survivors call clearing out. Everything comes back. I was very blessed, but I had a very definite near death experience, and it was I spent most of my spiritual quests were for remaining conscious during the death process. That was what I was the most interested in. I was not going to even come back again here or somewhere else with these fragmented past life memories. I've got them, but they're fragmented. Um, uh, I saw angelics during this time, what I call super nanofem, and I had when I remembered who I was, and I had to really evaluate that experience and those beings against the extraterrestrial beings I had encountered. The extraterrestrial beings I encountered very high vibration, very loving, all yada yada yada, but they were not like these angelics I encountered when I passed. I will tell you, they were definitely regal, much more pure love frequency. I think would have burned out my chakras in this body. I don't think we can take it. And you never think of love and light hurting in that way, but we're just apparently not quite capable of that.
Hmm.
What I experienced. So no disrespect to the star beings, they may have been involved in helping me also, but I know these angelics definitely did that. And there's so many hundreds of people that came to see me and looked through the window at me, and that I think they channeled a lot of that energy psychokinetically to my healing also through the Prime Creator. A reason the way I can say that I'm very cognizant now without a lot of the manual dexterities or anything I should have. So there's something happened. But
I
food for
definitely,
thought, if nothing else.
I definitely agree with
But
that. When I would,
but
when I,
like, if
what?
not for that accident, I would have never spoke. Sorry, I mean to cut you out. I never would have
No
spoke
worries.
about any of this. I was always gonna talk about it, but man, that was just talk. That stuff is
Hmm.
not conducive to your career. You know what I mean? So anyway, sorry to interrupt you, man.
No worries. When I'd have like right before miracles would start to happen, when I would see these astral, light forms within this realm, or around, even in dreams and whatnot. One message I would get is to research the different tiers of angels, because to me, if there's angels, angel or demon, either way, it's alien to how we're currently experiencing things. And to me, that helped me understand the different levels and what different groups are interested in, even though that's not, that's page one of a 300, 400, 500 page book or
Yeah.
100,000 page book. And I was able to understand, like, okay, this group is interested in this, and if I put my focus on developing, sciences on the planets or arts on the planets, all of a sudden, all these people who are also had some kind of contact and are opening it up, opening up a little bit about their experiences, we're all able to form these synchronicities one after one after one.
Hmm.
But on the topic of people gathering together, and that's the reason I brought up the "does anyone else see what you're seeing" thing, and there's the whole side of the movement or the communities or lack of communities that is the circle jerk of repeating topics. I thought I'd bring up. It is what it is. It is what it is. Um,
I can throw something in at you real quick if you want, man.
go for it.
Last
We're,
year, the
mhm.
last time I probably, for all I know, will ever go to that SETI Ranch, but
That's what I
I
wanted
went
to
to speak.
segue in.
Oh,
Yep.
oh, oh, I went to speak there. Actually, I'm sorry, it's the second time I spoke there, so it would have been 2017. But uh, I had to do a sky watch with like Jimmy Church and those people, and I've never done a sky watch. I had no interest in doing one, and on top of that, I started noticing something that people were like judging people like, oh, such and such did a sky watch and only two ships showed up, and it's like, is that the way to gauge if somebody is a real contactee or
Hmm.
not? So it's just little things like that. I think are just kind of more of a gimmick, as opposed to the real contact. That some CE5 and things like that may work. I'm not putting it down, but I'm just saying that for me, trying to summon the beings like that that's being done didn't work. Maybe when you get in a collective group and do it with collective consciously, it changes things. But for
When
me, it
everyone's
just
on the
didn't work
same
that way.
page.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah,
get us for
right.
that,
Right.
man.
The reason I bring up Iseti is the people who I do the team I have Project Boozebeam with, and one of the many podcasts on the network here is we want to get to the point where we can start going to different like contactee points or paranormal points and do like our own ghost adventures wing and whatnot. And obviously East City is on the list because of the experiences, but at the same time I keep hearing like, oh, there's like a military thing by the mountain or something like that. Or is that true? Because whenever I
You
hear
know
like a military connection and East City, I'm like, what do you think's going on? You know?
what? The only thing I know, James Gilling's done something to where that property is separate. But
Okay.
they've said before how at night Mount Adams you can see these lights on there, and one of them they call this dimensional door, and they say that the military has tried to break into that door, and they've had helicopters up there and things like that. They're messing with the mountain. At the same token, there's another mountain pass next to it called Sleeping Lady. Now, I'm not a young cat, so I thought I was at a point of my age that I was past the physical experiences until I went out there and spoke the first time and the second time. The first time I got blasted, man, blasted perceptually. And one thing was seeing this sleeping lady at night, seeing a rather large craft that's morphing, going down into the mountain and then popping back on and illuminating to where you could see it through the mountain.
Hmm.
And when I tell you I'm seeing this, I'm standing with somebody else. And this young man is looking like the football player on his knees, going, whoa, kind of huddled over, going, whoa, whoa, breathing real hard. And I asked him, I said, what are you seeing? He said, it's
Hmm.
impossible. I said, no, what are you seeing? And he's describing exactly what I'm seeing. I need to know because that type of delusion is not shared. And this thing comes back above the mountain, lights back up, goes out, goes down, comes back on, does it like 3 times. And when I got done, my friend, I was so blown away by that. My lips was all chapped. The next day, I could hardly talk about it. This guy could hardly talk about it. They did a video of us talking about what we'd actually seen. And when it got done, James Gillian tells me, he says, "Well, that point you're pointing at where the UFO gone down, it's called Cat's Peak or something like that, Catskill Peak or something like that." He said, "There's actually been soldiers stationed up there, and we've never known why." He says, "There's been 2 soldiers up there." And so that's the only thing about military stuff I know that's surrounding the ranch, but on the property itself, I don't think they have a problem with that. You need to
So
deal with the Sasquatch and all that out there first. Gosh, that place is a trip, man.
so East City, something's going on other
Yeah,
than witchcraft.
I would say they're watching the mountain, but the Native Americans talked about Mount Adams being.
Hmm.
They say that door is a door that Native Americans would take a warrior as far as they get up there, and the beings inside that door inside the mountain would heal them and send the warrior back after a certain amount of time.
It's
And
their
then
old
once I
tales.
think colonizing started, the beings stopped interacting so much with people. That's what they say anyway. I mean, like
Right.
I said, it's definitely a power spot out there. If anybody gets a chance to go out there, go check it out. As my brother would say, man, you didn't believe in no Bigfoot till you went out on that ranch. All the weird stuff happened to you. You didn't believe in it, did you? I was like, well, I had my doubts until I went out there. Now, as far as Sasquatch, something's going on.
I was about to say that seems like the perfect tagline for an Iseti shirt. Iseti, something's going on. Something's happening here. I've only heard good stories about James, so
Interesting guy, yeah, definitely.
yeah.
The whole property, and like I said, I think that there's a device inside that mountain. It's called an ore station, but it's a crystalline device that I think it scans people's life memories, and then it produces some type of a orb technology. You see orbs out there like it's nothing. People take pictures all the time. It produces some type of a orb that even on the microscopic level can get in our field of awareness, in our biofield, and change our perception. I think that's what's going on out there. And when certain people like you or myself get around this device, our DNA we activate it.
Hmm.
You know,
Yeah, that's one thing that if I go there, we'll have to I'll have to figure out when is the right group there, because through this community of people who are interested in the topic or anything spiritual or conspiracy or anything that is a few steps out there, whenever there's something that is a few clicks away from the original narrative that people have been told their entire life, if they're not adequately prepared for that information to enter them, they become a little bit neurotic. So it seems to be a hotbed for neurotic people. There's a reason that all the people who go to raves and dress up like fairies and do ecstasy are interested in aliens and stuff like that. There's a whole escapism to the new age scene as well, and I'm trying to bridge that gap and also avoid it at the same time, because there's enough people who let's get to the point, let's figure out they're useful idiots amongst us. They're people who mean well, who are putting out information, but at the same time maybe they weren't as ready as they think they were. And that's not a knock. It can happen to any person under the sun.
A problem is in these fields, the fields of ufology and New Age, you've got, first of all, delusional people and liars that are attracted to it. 2, you've got those that are mentally ill. 3, you've got just, like I said, just plain liars, And then you've got those that want to steal and are seeking fame and fortune only. And this really isn't the spot for it. And that becomes a major, major problem. And you can start telling, like you said, these people aren't putting out any information. And, like someone that can screw people over personally and then proclaim, not even a medium, proclaim to get all these messages from star beings, it's insulting. You know what I mean? So in that way, like, give me an example. I spoke at the Conscious Life Expo just a few weeks before this when I got back from Australia, before the whole virus era thing fully hit. And during a panel out there, Mary Rodwell and Linda Moulton Howe wanted to talk to me a lot afterwards, but I kept mentioning, I said, when dealing with contact, and what I just described as organic crafts, all right, being alive, and what is actually composing, like the ships I've been on board, there's a 4 compound. One would be metals that are mined from planets that are devoid of Van Allen belts. They have a great resistance, the metals from those planets do. Also a quasi-crystal type of a compound, okay, along with a fungus compound. Very important. That's why some of these things are almost mushroom inside, like the walls I talked about. And I've started talking about this publicly since 2014. About probably 8 months ago, a year ago, NASA released that they're going to be trying to make mycelium houses on Mars for people to habitate. That's mushroom. See that and they're using that right now repair infrastructure also. So this was me talking about it, and our science is starting to back it up. So you've got the 3 compounds there, and the 4th is DNA from the crew. So you put all these together, and that's what's actually grown over the singularity in deep space or in space. So that's why when I say the craft is alive, but when you start dealing with how would a living craft interact with not just us, but with our planet, they use the tree system. Look at how mushrooms have a system, a symbiotic connection with trees on this planet. You can see it right there, how some of these look like mushrooms, even on the outside, the cap. But so when you start dealing with that and you're seeing craft going into not just mountains, but into the ground, we have to get away from the Admiral Byrd thing and the hollow earth and get away from some of that and deal with what science has showed us. That there's something called the deep biosphere of this planet. And what it contains is about 97% of the undiscovered bacteria on this planet. And the deep biosphere is like all our oceans put together. Now, when you get a craft that goes in there, perfect way for another symbiotic connection. These are just things I'm not hearing these media people talking about much. These people claiming to be such contactees. Not that they're not. I'm not trying to discredit people. But I'm just saying a lot of them don't seem to be getting the information that is beyond Bringers of the Dawn that I read in 1987, man. I mean, come on. A lot of the stuff they're saying is just the same stuff, regurgitated, like you said, refined a little bit, and just throw some reptilians in there too. Everything's reptilians. Maybe we could be on ancient aliens. Let's not talk about what you and I are talking about right now, which is current aliens. Yep. Current contact.
It goes, love is light. I'm like, great. What else?
Yeah. I mean, and I some people got mad because I'm very definitely creator, loving person, but I'm not the love and light guy. You come on my platform trying to dog me out, dog out people that are just trying to do scientific research. I'm gonna check you and block you. I'm not gonna go, oh, love and light, brother.
Well,
I'm
they forgot.
Generation X. I'm probably gonna tell you to second go somewhere.
Got two
Sorry,
words
man.
for them. No,
Yeah.
I'm
Two
right.
words. That's it, my friend.
Got two words for you. No, I see. Hey, there's people forget. Like, you threw me off with the DX reference.
So sorry.
If you're not down with that,
Second. Yeah.
yeah, right.
That was great, man. That was great.
But people forget. Like, yeah, light is a thing, but you get more through knowledge. You get the wisdom to refine the knowledge, and therefore, you're opening yourself for light to enter you. As all these experiences, you're opening yourself because you've primed yourself to be ready to accept these experiences.
Yeah. Michael, for me,
That's probably why I didn't get sick on that ship with the plants.
that's a very interesting deal. You're taking me another way. Real interesting. I mentioned the ship that went down into the mountain.
Mm-hmm.
As this thing is doing this first, it almost looks like Venus, a star, till it started moving. I saw it moving. This guy, I'm standing there with Albert. He's like, "You seeing that?" I said, "Yeah." And then it moves over and it starts morphing and changing. It goes into like 5, back to 1, then 5 back, and as it starts moving towards the mountain, I mean, this is a conscious experience. I'm trying telepathically to tune into this thing. And I'm trying to really lock in. I want to know what's on board and what is it communicating, because so much happens on the superconscious level. Now, when I'm trying to tune in, the only thing I can see, I keep getting, are these white cactuses. They're in a very strange arrangement. And and I'm saying this to Albert, I keep seeing these white cactuses and I'm trying to tune in. He goes, well, maybe that's like and later on he told me, maybe that's like maybe the botanical area. And I said, no, I don't think so. I was trying to see crew members. And we start thinking about things like peyote and different things that can adjust with our nervous systems and think, where did that come from? Is that an Earth species? It's just, we have to just kind of expand our modalities. So in that way, I'll pump what Ray Hernandez, the guy that they used to call it quantum, it's CCRI now, is what he calls it now. Anyway, they're doing the whole thing that is actually scientific experiments or documentation on contactees. Especially, I mean, they put out a survey, a 5-phase survey that was so intensified that most people would do it. I only took like the first 2, and I was like, man, but but in terms like that, at least they're trying to actually put the scientific evidence and community with the contactees. That's what takes us. Like I told you when we went online. What about our experiences? It's one thing to say we're contactees. Hey, great claps. But what does
Pat
it
yourself
do
on
to?
the back.
Yeah. There's only like 80% of our population that are. But
Right.
how do we use this to further and improve our daily lives on the conscious level, the collective conscious level?
And that's what people need to be down with. And if they're not down with that, I got 2 words for them: sponsors, advertisement. There's no reason why people who are on the same page, who are basically like, we're spiritual superclass. I'm trying to create the break off civilization of this community. So I find people who's like, all right, you've gone to these events, or you've been a loner in the scene the entire time. So let's see, just cut out the 99% of problems from the beginning and not even play the game. And whoever's going to find it's going to find it. Like, I'll put maybe 20 minutes, 25 minutes of this on YouTube, and then do the whole part on the website, because I'm like, I'm not going to adopt my oppressor's beliefs,
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. That kind of made me back off YouTube a little bit and go to Patreon, just because, I mean, the trolls, there's a lot of good people on YouTube, but the trolls, I mean, who has time, my friend, to make like 20 fake accounts that are called Joe Schmo, or maybe 50? I spent like 45 minutes blocking Joe Schmoes. That's ridiculous, man. That wouldn't even be a good reality show.
I use that knowledge, and I'm like, just walk properly at this point. You know, there's no reason for all the fake accounts, and also with Patreon, at least they're giving you, you know, if you're gonna mess with me, I'm gonna get a ticket from it at this point.
Yeah.
But when I understand, it's like it's not just it's not just woo woo ness or magic. It's mental illness and delusion, and people are taking advantage of these people. So if I see it from a higher plane, I'll never have to dodge the bullet.
Yeah. You're so right, man. And I've said it many times, you probably already hear, but you know, the conferences I've went to, I've spoken at a few of them now, but you know, it's not the guest speakers, it's the attendees. Some of them are so gifted and so many experiences that they could be up there blowing away what I'm saying. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So that is, you know, I think that needs to be really, really, really communicated, because those are the people that, but most of us don't have the money to go to those conferences. You know what I mean?
So when you go to the after party, you see the beautiful girl there, but you know she's a hooker and you can't save her. I don't know if I'll leave that part in or not. We'll see.
I'll shut my mouth on that one, man. You know, I got
You
a
plead
bad
the fifth.
track record. Oh man.
And fast
Pretty
forward.
cool.
Well, either way, Barry, with all the craziness in the comment sections and the events and you know all those things going on, you'd figure we'd talk about our crazy experiences more than the than all the other misfits in the community, and that's why I try to bring it up. You know, where's the good, where's the bad? Let's start running in the right direction. It's 2020. We don't know what they're gonna throw at us next. But either way, I'm glad that you're moving forward. I'm glad that you're talking about the experiences that you're having. This is one of the first times that I'm coming out with a lot of my experiences. I never had a reason to. I always thought they're for me, but if there's a reason or a way that it might benefit someone else, you know, could they just be that selfish that, hey, just we'll throw all the information to him? It's like, well, oh, maybe something good could come out of it.
You know, I'll say something real quick. There's something that I stole the term from Doctor Who. They call it Artron energy.
Okay.
But in the experience of contactees, when one of us has been on board one of these craft, around this technology, constructed in the way I said, or around these beings that themselves are part of this craft as well, so they might have more individual black holes of their own molecules they're accessing. Either way, when we're around that as a contactee, I think that it emits some type of a radiation that our cells absorb. And when I get around another contactee or I interact with them, I can tell, I can sense it. I sense it on you. You know what I mean? And that way you look, it's odd. When I first saw you, I had no idea what you looked like. You know what I mean? But when I saw you, after all the camera problems, you look very familiar. You know, it's real odd. You know what I mean? Yeah. So I know that you're what you claim to be. I can just tell. You know, so it's pretty cool. But by the same token,
it's a big family out there. You never know where they show up.
You meet somebody talking major crap and saying there's a big contactee, you get near them, you don't feel the Artron energy. You're like, what the hell?
You know, I'd have people who are like somewhat spiritual, and they'd be like, oh, you know, there's something else about you, or he might be this or that. And I'm like, are you trying to say I look funny or something like that? It's like, oh, he's not. No, I know I look out of this world, of course.
Right on.
I'm just gonna start owning it now. Right on. But I'm glad that you came on. I'm even more glad that we talk about these topics the way that we do, because there needs to be a process of normalization, and even in that, we should be calling out the woo woo, you know, creepy crap at the same time.
Yeah, it's got to stop, man. It's getting really bad, you know, and it discourages people like us from coming forward. Mm-hmm. Had I not hit my head, man, I wouldn't have did it.
Yeah.
When my mom died, she said, "There's a reason why you're not a vegetable like they said." I said, "Well, what, Mom? I lost almost everything in the accident." She said, "You're supposed to do something, and I think it's really important." And then she died like a couple of days later, you know. So I was like, "Wow, okay, that must be what it is," you know. So.
Hey, I just wore that cross. I wore that cross that night in that car crash. It worked for another reason. So I mean, the door is open, right?
It's very real, man. I appreciate it, bro. Definitely.
Thanks for coming on, and thanks for helping me open up about these topics too.
Hey, no problem, man. I'll tell you what. If you ever want, I had a great time with this. It was different. That's what it's all about. That's why I wasn't going to do many more interviews. I don't like the cookie cutter thing, you know.
Yeah,
So I'd do anything I can to help you, man. Hey, have a good night, man. Don't party too hard.
no problem. And for everyone else, and I'll keep you around a couple seconds after. Everyone else wants to follow more of this content. I have That's What Happened. Spiritual Superclass is the spiritual part there. For that, for a higher tier, you can get all the content we put out. We do the news uncorrupted for the $5 tier. You're welcome to join there at patreon.com/thw.tv. Thanks again, Barry.
Hey, my pleasure. Thank you for having me, and thank you for your audience too.